Let's go back to Tampa, Florida. This is the case against Matthew Terry, and I'm very proud I haven't said Matthew Perry yet. But every time I hear the name in court, I'm thinking Matthew Perry, who, by the way, has had that big book out, suffered a lot of issues apparently, but not accused of murder, which is where Matthew Terry is at the moment. Accused of killing girlfriend Kay Baker, almost decapitating her. So because of the gruesomeness of the crime, certainly the medical examiner, always important in any case, but maybe more so in a case like this. Let's listen to some of the testimony of Ashley Perkins.
Any other wounds other than the hand wounds you need to describe for us?
There is a very superficial wound on the left infraclavicular region of the chest. Very pale, very likely postmortem, didn't inflict any major injuries. Photographed in the autopsy photos, I don't observe it here. With the lighting, I don't think we can see it in this photograph.
And which side is it now?
It's on the left side.
All right, those then the incised wound or sharp force wounds that we're talking about. Were there other injury to Kay Baker which were not sharp or incised wounds?
Other than the wounds in the hands that we haven't discussed, there were some minor blunt impact injuries. So that includes things like lacerations or like a true cut if you were to fall and scrape yourself, and abrasions, which would be the scraping portion.
All right, let's talk about some other injury. We have 59F. For example, what does 59F depict if there are anything other than sharp force injuries?
So this is her arm. We're looking for contusions, and in this one it's difficult to appreciate, but I don't appreciate any on this photograph.
Okay. Any non-blunt force trauma that you can recognize in 59T?
There is a contusion right here. It's a faint purple-pink contusion or bruising.
59P.
These are superficial abrasions and contusions area. Very pale pink, kind of orange.
59R.
The quality of photograph isn't really bringing out, but there's superficial abrasions in this area.
And is there anything here?
Yes, it appears got an abrasion here, orangey red.
All right, 59S. What does that show us as far as injury or damage? Injuries to Kay Baker?
This is just an overall photograph after I've had a chance to clean off the back to assess for injuries. I don't appreciate anything. Here, the pink-red discoloration is part of the lividity or the settling of the blood wound.
Okay, so I want to show you all the photographs of the hands, and I want you to tell me what you can about any of them. This is 59G.
Looking at an overall forearm, which appears without injury, and then here on the palm of the hand, that purple discoloration, that's just kind of bruising, contusion.
Familiar with the term defensive wounds?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
Injury sustained and then attack. So the victim is attempting to protect themselves in some way. In blade-type wounds, they tend to either grabbing at the blade or trying to go prevent someone from hurting the face or another part of the body and using the hands.
All right, so for the sake of a hypothetical, if Kay Baker is in a struggle with another person, are those wounds consistent with Kay Baker attempting to defend herself?
Yes, they could be. Yes.
All right, next 60C.
So again, the wound on the palm, this is just a closer photograph of that wound. There's a little bit of hemorrhage in that skin that you can see. So heart pumping during this infliction of this wound.
60D.
The wound here, very superficial. The wound here, and the image quality is a little difficult. I believe the photographer is trying to show a closer image of this wound here.
Again, those wounds are consistent with defensive wounds?
It could be.
There's no way you can tell to a reasonable degree of medical certainty exactly how those wounds were inflicted, but they are consistent with defensive wounds.
Correct.
You just can't say one way or the other.
Correct.
60E.
So the wounds here and here, these are just closer images. Again, this one is very, very superficial. So it has an orange-red color, potentially perimortem. This one that's lined up next to it, if you're consistent with each other, and you can see some of the red, purple discoloration in the skin. So perimortem when these were inflicted, but very superficial, didn't sustain any major damage.
And could all those wounds be inflicted using a sharp instrument?
Correct.
60F.
We're looking at the side of the finger. Then with the other adjacent sharp force type injuries, this is likely a part of that whole injury pattern. They're very superficial though. Without the other incised wounds, it could be classified as an abrasion or an incised wound. Likely that's part of the incised wound.
So as much as I don't want to see those images, I kind of want to see those images, but I'm sure you'll thank us later for not. Obviously, we don't show these autopsy photos. They're graphic, nasty. We know the nature of the injuries. And the questions, you keep talking about these these different wounds. And I want to ask my guest, Richard Schoenstein is here, also Katherine Lizardo. We talked about the knife earlier, which we think looked like this because that was the investigation. They found the knife block in the kitchen. One was missing. By checking out the type of knives, etc., they come up with this 3.5-inch, what's called a bird's beak paring knife. I want to get this in front of the jury just so they can start doing the visualization that I'm doing. I'm going to ask Richard to make his argument to get it in. Then I'm going to ask the Honorable Katherine Lizardo to rule on that request. So, Richard, tell me why some demonstrative version of the knife should come in.
Well, Your Honor, you're absolutely right. We are entitled to show the jury a demonstrative exhibit. You can instruct the jury that it's not the actual knife. We're not going to pretend it's the actual knife. We're not trying to mislead the jury that we found the knife, and that obviously is part of the defense case. But we're allowed to show a demonstrative manifestation of what the knife would have looked like based upon the scientific evidence of what the wounds look like. We've worked backwards. We want to be able to construct it for the jury and let them make the decision.
Okay, so, Your Honor, what do you think?
Your motion is granted. It'll be allowed in, but we will have to have specific jury instructions that limit what the jury will use that demonstrative evidence for.
Okay, Judge, I'm going to follow up with this question then. That won't happen. I mean, there's just no way to keep the jury from making of this what they're going to make of it, which is, ultimately it comes down to a probative versus prejudicial analysis. And this is very probative. It's also, there's no evidence you want to get in that is not prejudicial. If it isn't prejudicial, why do you want it in? So it's a delicate balance. And I don't know in this case, Katherine, do you think they're going to try to get something like this in so the jury can fill in this blank?
I think it would be helpful for the prosecution. I ruled that way because I just wanted to get it in because I'm a very visual person. But you're right. It probably will not, because even though that is missing in that butcher block, we're not exactly sure if that is the weapon used for Kay Baker and also the weapon used by the defendant to self-inflict the wounds if they were self-inflicted. There has to be more expert testimony to correlate that kind of knife to the wounds that she had. And her wound was so severe that you mentioned it almost decapitated her head. And that's just so horrible. And is it just one knife or one weapon? What if there's two weapons? And looking at that defendant when he was actually crying while her wounds were being described by the medical examiner, it makes you wonder that they have two theories here, which is he was mentally ill when he did it, or they're going to say he didn't do it at all because there's another person there.
Yeah, and they say it was the left side of her neck, so some sort of motion, this way.